Greetings and salutations, guys. I am here with my review of Wolfman, although I do want to pause for a second just to acknowledge what has been going on in Los Angeles this past week. It's been a very scary and harrowing week, but for some people it's been an absolutely awful week with, so many homes lost. I think almost everyone I know knows someone, myself included. We all know people who have lost their homes. Right now we've been very lucky. There was one night we thought we might have to evacuate. We packed our cars, which remain packed, but we have not yet so far. But a lot of people have lost a lot. And also these firefighters have been amazing, just continually, 24 hours a day fighting what has just been this non-stop blazes across the entire county. So I'm going to put in the description links to charities you can donate to help with, relief effort and, with the firefighters, just because there's a lot of people that are doing amazing work fighting these, but there's also a lot of people who have just lost tremendous amount. And it's still an ongoing situation. All which being said, it's weird to review a movie right now, but at the same time, it was nice to go to a press screening for Wolfman tonight as I record this, because it was nice to kind of take a break from what has been, a lot of watching news and watching the situation and, being very frantic about it all, to try to get away from it for a couple hours with a horror movie. And it's a very good horror movie. So I am very happy to say that I really liked Wolfman. This is the new version that is directed by Leigh Whannell. He wrote it with his wife, Corbett Tuck. And like his version of Invisible Man that came out a few years ago, it's a very new take, just taking the core concept of this sort of classic universal monster, but doing something entirely different with it. Starting, but not limited to, dropping the from the title, The Wolfman.
It's clear.
In 2010, we had the Benicio del Toro version of The Wolfman that was a straight-up remake of the original from the 30s and used the same characters. This one discards that entirely. This is about a guy named Blake, played by Christopher Abbott, who grew up in a very isolated existence in Oregon, kind of in the middle of nowhere, and returns home with his family because his father has passed away and needs to pack up his house. But almost immediately, they get attacked, and some sort of creature scratches Blake's arm, and bad things continue to happen because Blake is starting to go through some changes, and there's still this creature out there trying to get them. This version of Wolfman is really well done. I think it's very intense. It is legitimately scary. There's a lot of great chase sequences of, characters trying to get away from this creature that is after them. You feel that intensity. You feel the danger. It does a really good job of mixing the environment with the creature. So there's, parts like even the inciting incident, which is this truck crash at the beginning. They have a moving truck and they get attacked while they're in it, and the truck is in danger of sort of falling off the side, and it's a little bit of a Lost World vibe as far as, the threat both of the vehicle and of the creature that's trying to get to them. Whannell, I think he's just gotten better and better as a director, and he knows how to build the tension and how to make these sequences really just sort of grab a hold of you. This is a very small cast, and they work really well together. You've got Christopher Abbott, Julia Garner, and Matilda Firth here has this core family unit. The movie definitely lays it on a bit thick in the early scenes, establishing the close bond that there is between Blake and his daughter Ginger, but it really works at the same time because you want to invest in this father and daughter, and then of course feel this tension and this horror that he might do something bad to her as he starts to transform. And this is all helped quite a bit by Matilda Firth being such a strong child actress and having a really great on-screen rapport with Christopher Abbott. There's definitely echoes of The Shining here as far as this small family unit in a very isolated place as the dad starts to make this scary transformation. But this is on such an accelerated timeline. This is all happening very quickly, and I think that makes it feel very different, but also really adds a sort of ticking clock element because it's just something is happening to Blake. This thing is also trying to get into the house, and Charlotte, Julia Garner's character, has to figure out a way to save her family in the midst of this. And it's very much looking around the place. What can they find? What can they do? They can't call anyone. They have no cell phone reception. And there's very little around the house, which hasn't been lived in for a while. And I think Whannell and Garner do a really good job of making you believe that this woman is sort of thinking on her feet without being a, superwoman who's doing things that seem outside of her grasp or outside of her capabilities. She is just in the moment fighting for survival for both herself, her daughter, and she hopes her husband, but things are going on with her husband. And what's going on with him is a really strong point of the movie too, because we've seen so many werewolf movies and we've seen so many movies about people losing control as they become a werewolf. But I think that the depiction of what Blake is enduring here is really unique. There is a very specific way they do it. There's a sort of werewolf vision we get in this movie when we shift perspective to Blake and how he's seeing the world and how that is changing as he's changing. And first of all, it just looks cool as far as, the visual of it all, but it also makes you understand the sort of literal distortion going on and how he is operating now at a different level than a normal human, and his own terror in that, and how he's sort of losing himself. Just sequences that we've seen in other movies, I think, get a really great spin here. So including his senses and how, he's hearing things better than ever, but in a way that is also very scary. There's a sequence involving a spider and a spider walking on the wall and how he hears it that I think is just really cool and unsettling. And I really loved, the way that they used all the ambiance around both visually and audio-wise in this film to convey what's happening to him. And I really have to give huge kudos to the sound designers here. That would be P.K. Hooker and Will Files, because the sound design is impeccable and it's so important to this movie. Sound design is important to all movies. It's also very important to horror movies. But I think this one in particular, it really is kind of a star of the show right from the beginning. And sometimes that's just the jarring things happening and there's some jump scares that are really good. But a lot of that is just showing you, again, this perspective of both, Charlotte and what she's hearing and her terror, but then shifting it to Blake and what he's going through. And after the movie, I actually heard a lot of people talking about the sound design. I think it really does stand out. This is a very focused movie. Like I said, it's a very small cast. It's a very small group of characters. Most of it is taking place in complete isolation. But I think it really does a really good job of telling that story. I think maybe I slightly preferred Invisible Man if we're going to compare the two. Leigh Whannell, Universal Horror, kind of his take on the Universal Horror characters. But yeah, this one is still really, really effective in its own right. And especially I think werewolves, there is sometimes a feeling of sameness to it all. But I think that this film really manages to feel like it's doing its own thing with a very well-worn concept. And I should talk about the werewolf transformation, because that's kind of always a big question, is how are they going to do the transformation? And I think werewolf movies now all exist in the shadow of An American Werewolf in London, which I think is, still stands out as probably the best werewolf transformation sequence ever. And while this does not surpass American Werewolf in London, it's still a very good transformation. And I think it works very well in the context of this film and what they're doing with this very, not scaled down, but, they really put an emphasis on the man part of Wolfman. That this is something that he is afflicted with, that, he's been infected with, they talk about a lot. And so they don't make him or any werewolf in this movie look like incredibly animal-like. I mean, there's just animalistic things about what's going on here, and his features change, but it's more about seeing him as a human who's been horribly transformed. And this is a movie operating with its own rules. They throw out completely anything about a full moon. The opening scene of the movie lets you know that because it's set in the middle of the day. And guess what? There's still a scary werewolf out there. And I like that a lot because it means that those tropes don't exist in this movie. It's operating at its own level with what's happening and the how and why of it all. And it's a very effective story telling what I think is, ultimately trying to be this sort of emotional tale about this family trying to get through this event together, this awful event together. And it works really well. So coming off a year with so many great horror movies, I'm very happy that the first big one of 2025 is another strong one, because the more horror the better in general, but the more really good horror the better. That's even better. Better is better. I know, crazy, but true. And so Wolfman definitely getting things off on a good foot going into 2025, a year that needs more things on a good foot, because real life has given us a lot of problems. But so we can look to movies to hopefully find some I would say happier. This is not a happy movie per se, but to see some quality events unfolding on the big screen. So those are my thoughts on Wolfman 2025. Like I said, I will put in the description some links to charities that you can donate to for everything going on with the fires and the people that are trying to rebuild their lives in the wake of losing their homes from the fires. And I want to thank everyone who has been doing that and donating and helping, because there's going to be a lot of work to do going forward with that, and we're not even out of it yet. The fires are still burning right now, and hopefully that will end very, very soon. All right, guys, thanks so much. Take care. I'll be back with more soon. Oh, I forgot to mention that there is a moment in Wolfman where Leigh Whannell definitely seems to be doing a little wink, a little nod to his own cinematic horror history. And I cannot believe it's just a coincidence that it plays like such a callback. So, Mr. Whannell, that moment was greatly appreciated.